Hey everybody, Dr. Hensey here, and today we're going to talk about assessment in APUSH. Make sure you watch this video after you watch the short videos on the curriculum framework and the end of lesson questions. It will make a lot more sense if you do. So to start off, you know now that we use objectives for everything in this course. They're at the beginning of each YouTube video. They're at the top of the notes page. They're in the end of lesson questions, the curriculum framework, the assessments. They're everywhere. They're pretty straightforward and fairly easy to understand, and objectives mark the key concepts in American history. First semester, we have 54 objectives spread out over 5 periods. Some have more, some have less. But you should never have more than, I think the biggest is 15 objectives in one unit. So our goal in APUSH is proficiency. We're going to be using that term a lot. Proficiency, proficiency, proficiency. And proficiency means that you are proficient. You have shown an adequate amount of knowledge and skill on an objectives. And that is what we will be using to score you, is how proficient are you on that objective. And all of our objectives are 10 points. So for us, the proficiency magic number is 6. If you score 6 out of 10, that means we have deemed that you know enough information about that objective to be able to use it and you can move on. If you score below the magic number, that means 5 or below, that is when you'll have the opportunity to retake that assessment to see if you can do better. Now, you cannot redo assessments if you are proficient. If you get a 10 out of 10, obviously you wouldn't want to. If you get a 7 out of 10, you may not want to. But if you get a 6 out of 10, you may go, ugh, that sucks on that objective. But unfortunately, if you're proficient at it, that is the score you get. You only get to retake those objectives in which you showed a lack of proficiency. Okay, that will make more sense once we get into it. As far as what SIS looks for, you won't see exams. We don't have quizzes and exams in here. We don't have tests. What you will see is the assignments listed in SIS are going to be the objectives. And each unit will put in the objectives for that unit. And your score, your proficiency will be displayed after you're assessed. So when you look in the grade book, you're going to see a lot of scores that say Unit 1, Objective A, Unit 2, Objective B, et cetera, et cetera. And you'll see how well you did on that, and you can track your progress. So no tests, no quizzes. If your parents check your grades regularly, and by regularly I mean every 10 minutes, you may want to tell them that things are going to look different than their other classes. Finally, if you retake for non-proficiency, if you score below a 6, this is the 3-step process that we do. The goal is there are 3 opportunities to redo an objective, and hopefully by the time you get to the 3rd, you will have mastered it. So the primary assessment is the first one we all take together in class. They're pretty short. Each objective has its own assessment, so there may be 6, there may be 10 of them. And if you score a 6 out of 10 on that primary assessment, you are done and over with. You don't have to do anything else. If you score below a 6, which we're anticipating is going to be very few people, small number, then you get the opportunity to retake that assessment in a different form, not going to be the exact same thing, to see if you can show proficiency a second time. And that allows, if you've had a bad day or something was on your mind or you weren't feeling good or you just didn't get it and you need to go back and study a little bit more. If you get below proficiency on that second assessment, below a 5 that time, then you have the opportunity for one last chance to show that you have proficiency on that particular topic. That's called the final assessment. But before you do the final assessment, you have to schedule a time to sit down with an APUSH teacher and do a little tutoring so we can figure out why after the first 2, you're still getting off the rails. You cannot do the final assessment until you've had a tutoring session with an APUSH teacher. That is essential. That final assessment score, unfortunately, is also the last opportunity. So even if you're still not proficient, at the end of taking it once, taking it again, tutoring, and taking it a 3rd time, that is the score that will remain in SIS. As always, if you score less than proficient the first time, that score goes in the grade book. And then if you score higher on your secondary or final assessment, we will change that score. Again, you can only retake objectives if you were less than proficient the first time around. That means lower than 6. So how are we assessing you? We have a bunch of different questions that we will use. So when we say we're going to take an assessment over period 1, that means it will be a combination of all of these type of questions. So the first we call multiple choice clusters. They're called clusters because there's between 1 and 4 questions that are all tied together to the same primary or secondary source stimulus. So, for example, we may give you a document. Let me show you one here. Here is a primary source document that we're giving you that has a multiple choice question attached to it. So this particular multiple choice cluster has one question. That question is worth 10 points. Some of them may have 2, some may have 3, some may have 4. It depends on the complexity of the topic. They're all worth 10 points. So if it's a 4-point question, each part of it is 2.5 points. So that's how we're going to assess you. The number of questions in the cluster varies from assessment to assessment. Next up is our, come back screen, free response questions. Oh, forgot to tell you, multiple choice clusters are the most common. It's usually half or a little bit more than half of your assessment. So that means it could be anywhere from like 14 to maybe 30 questions. The free response questions, we call them FRQs. It's a one paragraph written response. You'll do it online. Literally, we just take the objective and ask you to answer it. We're going to give you a structured format to do that. There will be 1 or 2 of these per assessment. And when I say paragraph, I mean paragraph. I do not mean a voluminous dissertation of an answer. I mean a clear, concise paragraph that will answer the question, usually 5 to 7 sentences. So here is what an FRQ question may look like. You see right here, here is the learning objective B in this case. And what you have to do is just answer that question in a paragraph using the structure that we're going to give you. Next up are called document-based questions. Again, 1 paragraph response, 5 to 7 sentences usually. We don't want a big long answer. That usually signals a teacher that you're just trying to BS and write anything you can think of to write. Again, we'll give you a structure for that paragraph. We'll tell you exactly how it should be structured and what needs to go in it. That's what this course is for. In a DBQ, you will do an analysis of a primary source document, and you will have 1 or 2 of those per assessment. Let's take a look at a DBQ. So for example, here is a primary source document from someone called Bartolomé de las Casas. And what we're going to have you do is just write a paragraph where you break that document down and do an analysis of things like purpose and point of view and audience and historical context. We call those HIPPO, and you'll learn those in the summer writing seminar. Again, not voluminous, just correct. That's what we're looking for. Our next type of assessment question is a short answer question, SAQ. Usually these are 3-part responses. Sometimes they'll ask you to describe and then explain. The 3 parts take a historical concept, break it down into smaller components, and ask you to look for trends. Each response is 3 to 4 sentences. You list them, A, B, and C, and there's usually 1 SAQ per assessment. So we see here is a short answer question. Briefly explain, one example. Briefly explain a second example, and then briefly explain how one example resisted change. So in a question like this, you're going to be asked to do 3 tasks, which you can answer sometimes in 1 to 2 sentences, sometimes in 3 to 4 sentences. Pretty short, but they're a little bit more complex because you have to pull from your knowledge of history and link ideas together. Finally, we have the original student response. These are new this year. OSRs are part of your assessment, but you're going to complete them outside of class. And they are due on the date of the assessment. Whether you're physically there or not, you need to turn your OSR in by that time. And what we'll do is we'll give you an objective from the unit. It's one that covers the entire period. If you watch the video on the curriculum framework, I did point out which objective is always the OSR, though it didn't make much sense to you at that time. But you develop an original way to address that objective. It could be writing. Maybe you write a compare and contrast paragraph and turn it in. It could be visual arts. You make a picture or sketch out a painting. You don't have to do a full painting, but you could turn in your rough sketches. You could make a collage. I mean, I guess you could do a playlist of songs. Anything that's visual, it's auditory and visual, you can do as an OSR. Or you can do something online, like you could make a YouTube video that answers that question, or maybe a mini website that you post through Google Sites. This is 10 points, just like the rest of the objectives. One thing I want to make sure that you know is that you don't have to think of this as a major project. I don't want you coming in with something you spent 8 hours on for an OSR. OSRs are designed to be just a quick way for you to put something together using your creativity and whichever talents you feel are best. To answer the objective. Keep in mind, it's only 10 points. It weighs as much as that short answer question or that multiple choice question that we looked at earlier. So don't go out and buy a huge 4-foot by 6-foot canvas and paint, Michelangelo on it and turn it in for your OSR. We're not looking for that. We're just looking for a way for you to show a knowledge of information using a skill that is unique to you. So I look forward to seeing your OSRs. We've never done these before, so we may be tweaking all of this a little bit as we go on. This is new this year, but I think we're going to have some really exciting things turned in. If you have questions about any of this, post in the comments below and I'll answer it, or your classmates will, and we'll dive into this together. But I'm looking forward to this and seeing how proficient you are at your assessments. Thanks a lot, everybody, and have a great day.